Today's guest is one of my favorite astrologers, the Peace Dealer. You may remember him from my interview in season 1. Now, I've been following him for many years, and when it comes to change making, this man walks the talk. He's a renegade, he's a disruptor, and best of all, he lets all of the aspects of himself be seen, the inspired, the naughty, the joker, the visionary, all of it. And with over 8 years of experience as a cosmic counselor specializing in astropsychology, the Peace Dealer has personally conducted several thousand consultations from individuals around the world. Welcome back to the show. To say I'm excited to end this podcast season with you is an understatement.
Thank you for having me. Um, I kind of like how everything kind of played out. I actually did a talk with my friend Chance earlier, and I thought that was cool how he's an Aries, and I know you were born Leo season, so I see it as like the first fire to the next fire. So I'm definitely fired up, warmed up. I'm warmed up, and I'm
I love that so much. And I don't think that's a coincidence either. I feel like that's the energy that's been building. And the world, from when we last spoke officially to now, the world is kind of a different place. And the magical moon messages that you've been sharing really have been a place of reassurance and strength. I love listening to them. And on many occasions I felt like it can't just be me who's feeling like that. And the humor that you bring to these conversations really helps, I think, the listener digest what you're saying. Like, you're so factual, there's so much technical aspects that you share that it's really overwhelming. But with the humor, it does definitely makes it easier to digest. And um, I guess, like, my question to you is how, like, since we last spoke, which has been, I think, nearly 2 years now, how have you seen that process for yourself? Like, the way that you are channeling in those messages, do you feel um like you've been surrendering more to your own power and the way that you communicate, and has that evolved for you? Have you noticed that?
I think that was just so well worded because that was entirely a major theme of the past like year and a half, where when I started this journey, one of the biggest issues was surrendering to it and breaking conditioning and feeling, oh, I have to make it sound logical, it has to make sense. Versus now, it's just so much easier to just flow, and to just trust what it is I've studied, what I know. And on the theme of leveling up, that was a major theme of this year with Jupiter and Gemini. I definitely feel like I've completely begun a new cycle of evolution. And yeah, a lot is just it just felt like one era and cycle of my life is closing out, and we're ready to step into the next like 10, 30 years.
That's one of my questions, actually. This year has been a lot about personal growth and being our authentic selves. And really, since the last time I spoke to you, I feel like that has been the theme for everybody. Like, it's just been an anchoring in to more of ourselves. Do you, like, when you look at what has been happening with the cycles specifically, can you talk to what has actually been happening? Like, just as like a bit of a recap for where we've been?
Yeah, yeah, I'm absolutely okay. I would say even relative to 2022, I know we had Jupiter in Pisces, Saturn was coming out of Aquarius. And I think it's a really good question because the 2023 and 2024 chapter years are so significant. I look forward to looking back 5, 10, 20 years from now and us realizing how historic what we lived through everything from 2020 was. 2020 I see as the beginning of the end. So in learning to look at astrology more cyclically, instead of just in individual pieces. It helped me really respect the cycles. And it's very amazing to just see, almost like cookie cutter, where majority of transits in the first three zodiac signs normally throughout all of history bring about initiations, beginnings. Then we can look at, anywhere from Cancer to Virgo and then Libra to Sagittarius, where they begin to integrate through society, break through collectively and universally. And then once, of course, we see major transits through Capricorn, Aqua, and Pisces, that to me, those three zodiac signs all represent one season. So the first three are the spring season, the last three are the winter season, based on the Northern Hemisphere. And that winter season is the end game to me. This is where after Sagittarius, the climax of the movie, where you defeat the villain and then you come into the conclusion of the story. It's so fascinating. I want to do documentaries coming into the next decade and the rest of this one of just logging the history, tying it to the astrology, and you will all see how, collectively themes all around the world took people from one way of thinking to initiate into a new way of thinking. 2020 was where we had Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, Mars, and Capricorn. The apocalypse cycle, with them representing the four horsemen, activated March 21st, 2020. And that to me, if Cap, Aqua, and Pisces is the end game, well, the beginning of that end stage is Capricorn. So that was like the beginning of the end. And now we're going to have an eclipse in March with Saturn and Neptune in the North Node. And some people are saying that anytime you've had an eclipse with two outer planets, it's major monumental shifts. And that to me is the end phase of the end game. So 2022 and 2023 was coming out of that middle phase. And why that's very significant to me is those 2 years brought about the activation of a brand new Jupiter cycle. Jupiter had now left Pisces, initiated back in Aries around 2022, 2023. We had in April of 2023, the Sun conjunct Aries. And the last time we had a cycle start like that was around 2010, 2011. So, not only revisiting that, but unlike 2012, 2011, now we have Pluto getting ready to come out of Capricorn. Now we have Uranus since 2018 getting ready to come out of Taurus. Neptune so much further since 2012 in Pisces. And it's everything that can be seen around, the world, everyone becoming disillusioned with how, the world is being run, or what's really true or not, or just at least socially and relative to a lot of themes that our parents and their grandparents really brought in, versus a budding new generation, a Gen Z and Gen Alpha, that are ready to just throw that away and burn it up and whatnot. And it's interesting to know how 2023, 2024 is that crucial transition. The way I like to see it is 2023 activated the boat ride into maybe coming out of the old era. 2024 is what completely shifted our perspective with Neptune and Saturn in Pisces and Jupiter in Gemini. And 2025 is where now we push forward with the way everyone around the world has individually evolved and changed their perspectives. And 2025, especially by August, where we're going to have Neptune and Saturn 1 and 2 degrees Aries, Pluto like 3 degrees Aquarius, and Uranus 1 degree Gemini, that to me is where, boom, we've officially stepped into the next era over the next 20 years, rest of the decade. I think it's very exciting. It's bringing new originality. But yeah, 2023, 2024, I think was really preparing us to really step out and awaken from this nightmare slash dream, and to get ready to innovate and revolutionize everything. Yeah.
Yes, and I feel like there's just so much that I want to talk to what you just said. So first of all, I feel like a lot of people can relate to 2023 being. I mean, we know what happened in 2020, and and so forth. But 2023, I felt like was like a really disruptive year. Like it was like everything was sort of fell apart. It was very much about like healing. That's what it felt like. And then this last 12 months has felt like the learning and the integration side of things. And that has been tough. And but then we've seen that on the world stage as well, and in America especially. And that's one of the other reasons I wanted to talk to you, because the world as we know it is changing, and I wanted your perspective on that. Like, I don't, there's not a, obviously not a disconnect from individuals and, the mass collective and the world, but we've seen some big things happen, in America, especially recently, that really talks to what has happened with all of these cycles.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it makes me think of the individual and the self, and then, of course, the social community, and then the entire collective, the global system and the globalists. Um, it's helped me respect Pluto cycles, in the 60s, the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s is where we had Pluto going from Leo out of Libra. And this is where so much social revolution has happened, like the civil rights movement, amongst so many other things, the hippie generation, which I mean, I learned about as a kid, but now in my 30s, I recognize how significant those movements were. Geopolitical, conflicts in countries that were still kind of, I think many have resolved, but many more have opened up. And then we look at, of course, the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, and now coming in the 2020s. And we now have Pluto going through into the collective, the universals, where now everyone around the world is awakening. But it's also exposing corruption in globalist system, facets. And now with, Uranus and Gemini and Saturn and Neptune coming into Aries, I think the main thing here is we're stepping into an amazing renaissance and revolution of the individual rights, where the society is supposed to put the individual in check. But what happens if the governments are corrupt? What happens if the collective people who are supposed to represent us aren't doing so? And that was a major theme when this Declaration of Independence was signed, where Pluto is where it's at now, where they felt that they were not being represented, no taxation without representation. So yeah, it's nice to see, not to say it's exactly the same, but I think, with innovation of technology, I think there's and then, we may also be entering a whole new industrial revolution that may make everything obsolete. So it'd be interesting to see how that kind of taps into how much more power the individual can have, or how their rights may become for. But yeah, especially in America, like you mentioned, the reason why I was really speaking of the social revolutions and then the globalists versus the individuals, right? Because individuals come together and make a society, and then a bunch of societies form a collective. So it's like, I think there's mass disillusionment around legacy media and how individuals must be the one that actually report this news. And I wasn't sure what that looked like. And now Elon Musk has been very open about saying that's what X is. You are the media now. And, that, of course, new levels, new devils, that can open up to share problems. But it's just so amazing to see it shift like that. And give us an idea of how things are going to look like. People really questioning a lot more what they're told, and more than ever, uh, people are like, even with the CEO who got assassinated, there's so much people who believe what they're being told isn't what really happened, which isn't a new phenomenon, but to see it more with less ability to censor, I think is very exciting, even if it's not even true. Just the whole act of doing so. Yeah.
Yes, and I mean, given that I'm in Australia, I would say most of the world was holding its breath to see what was going to happen with the election, and
Mhm.
there was like the to describe the energy is is kind of challenging because everyone was nervous, like that just, what I was feeling here in Australia, like everyone was feeling very nervous, really concerned. There was a lot of contrast with the way people were feeling about things. And it like 2020, it really highlighted critical thinking and people taking the time to dig deeper into things rather than just taking what was, just on legacy media, just being told what was happening. And my best audience is my parents, right? Because they watch so much TV, mainstream TV. And so they're like a really good benchmark for me to see where most of the collective would be sitting in that space. And I had to talk to them, like I was opening their eyes to a lot of different perspectives during that time. And now they're starting to see, oh, like they're actually starting to see where some of the gaps are in the way mainstream media, I mean, that's how it's always been anyway, so much corruption, but the way that they're describing situations, that there's no accuracy, there's no real accuracy to what they're sharing. And I I think when you look at uh, how things happened during that election, you had Elon Musk stepping up, but you also had the likes of Joe Rogan with his podcast. That in and of itself talks to the individual changing the game. One person, and I've got the full goosebumps, one person, one action, one choice to be on that podcast changed the game because it was a real conversation. The editing wasn't, it was like a free flowing conversation, and you got to see the truth. And when one person, with all of their shadow aspects and truth or whatever, is willing to put it out there, and the other one is hiding and
I was about to say
refusing to
that
be
and her.
yeah,
Exactly.
refusing to be interviewed, first of all, and then refusing to be on the podcast unless they got to edit it the way that they wanted to edit it. Um,
I
that 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 in and of itself, I think, was the turning point. And I think a lot of people went, hang on, whoa, like why wouldn't you want to talk to somebody? And Joe even admits that he was on her sort of side initially, and then his perspective and everything changed, and as a result he changed, I would think, a lot of people's opinions about what was going on. And that is one person who just started a conversation, who just had an open, beautiful conversation about what can we expect, what is real here, what like, and you got to see Trump in all of his ADHD shenanigans where he talks in rhymes and circles. But if you look past it, you got the message of what he was trying to say. And then he included a team of people who were going to revolutionize and I hope that they will revolutionize what is happening. And so that, I feel like that is what you were just talking to about, how the industrial revolution is going to change. There's going to be a lot of structure. The thing is, and this is my question to you. I'm so interested because I haven't heard you really talk to it, but do you feel like this is, like, with him coming in and his team of people, do you feel like this is a step closer to where we need to be? Or do you feel like there is still another big collective breakthrough where we free ourselves from the prison of needing an outer authority dictating what we do?
exactly. I love that question. Um, the 2016 when Trump was being talked about, I was not into politics. I didn't even vote because I wasn't really aware, and I had so many people trying to get me to hate Trump, and I didn't understand. I was like, I thought you guys loved him before, and like that alone made me like him, not as a person, not like, oh, I want to support him. I was like, I like this guy because he's making people who never cared about politics before suddenly get all passionate because they hate him or because they like him. And to me, I saw him as an agent of revolution and change. to me, I felt like even if he was a bad guy, he has to be the guy that's going to stir things up. Then, of course, by 2020, I realized, no, he is the guy. Like, that's amazing. But as far as the election, he has Uranus on his sun, and I felt like with the Uranus and Gemini return that hasn't been in this sign since like I think 85 years, it symbolically would be right to have a president who has Uranus in Gemini representing that individual nature of innovation. I think we're in good hands where he may be the transition that's going to help us break through. And one thing that really dialed down the individuality that I wasn't aware. I found this piece of information out the day he won the election, where one of the commentators was like, "Yeah, he basically ran this whole campaign by himself. He had a team around him, but it was really all him that was basically calling the shots. And it literally one, and Gemini is an individual zodiac sign. So it let me kind of see like that could be the new precedent that's coming through where there's just so much um you know, not even power, but capability. And to answer your question, yeah, I feel like, yeah, there may be more to do, but not only are we in the right step, there is the opposition that is devastated that he's there, that's still going out of their way to undermine, what he may be accomplishing, make everything he's doing look bad, just severely in denial as if he really started an insurrection, which is still comical to me. But yeah, I think maybe that could lead into a civil war. I'm hoping not. But uh, regardless, his presence there is still, keeping, regardless of whether you like him or not, it's definitely keeping people on the edge of their seats. And even the unconventional nature of his cabinet that I think also sets precedents too, but will definitely be interesting.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my other questions. Is it's still a little while to go. We've almost got still another month before he takes over. And do you see, I mean, like it's sort of hard to determine what the feel is from Australia, but being over here, we're kind of out here on our own. But I feel like there's still a ways to go, and but there was such a massive majority shift voting for him that I feel like that small might like that them the minority now, those the other ones, um that I feel like, do you feel like they've got enough, is there enough momentum for them to pull America into a civil war? Like, do you actually see that happening?
Well, I mean, I think if it happened, it's because of just like misinformation
Yeah.
and people reacting too quickly to just lies before people actually know what's happening, which I think is why this is important. People are changing the way they look at established media that's not been the most honest, and people now have the ability with platforms like X to really talk individually about it. And yeah, that doesn't mean it's perfect. That doesn't mean that there won't be people saying stuff that's not true, but there's also stuff that is true that may not be, promoted there. And I think relative to how it is, it's very relative to that state of like, say, a minority or majority. I feel like what was very revealing was, the fallout, right? When you look at Black voters, majority percentage did vote for Kamala Harris. I think I was one of the like 27% of Black men that voted for Trump. But then you also have the 8% of Black women that voted for Trump. And I think that's so interesting. Even though President Trump had a higher number of minority voters, that 8%, that 23%, it's like we don't exist in the Black community in a certain sense. It's like the Democratic Party, and I don't even think it's at fault to just liberals or the Democratic Party, but this pervasive narrative that, oh, if you're Black, you have to vote for these people as if they speak for everybody, as if, oh, this is the nature of the culture. It's just giving this really weird image that all Black people have to be the same in a certain way. And if not, you're a coon, you're a sellout or something like that. We saw this with women where certain white women are like, oh, I'm wearing a blue band so you can differentiate me. And I think we're going to see a deterioration of these pseudo race politics. And I think a loss like this is so good for the Black community because it's going to further awaken them to realize that a party can't answer your questions, a party that has repeatedly used you over and over and then thrown you away after the elections. It could inspire more solidarity, maybe for them to build a party or to come together. But I'm just looking forward more to um, disillusionment. As far once again as a civil war, who knows if um, I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on here, but I do believe that Trump's presence in, his first term is a huge reason why COVID happened, how it happened. And so who's to say that now that he's back in office, five more pandemics won't come up? But we already went through it the first time. So I think a lot of things that happened 2020 are going to come back, but the way we approach it isn't going to be the same way that,
Yeah.
was forced to
Yeah,
be
it's really
interesting.
interesting. I was reading here that in a part of Australia, I think it was like 30 deadly viruses was stolen out of a lab. 30. Like, how does that happen? And so you know that there's just shenanigans going on. Like, you just know that it's, without being too, tinfoil about it all, you know there's potential for something else, because that's a that chaos creating is part of all of that shadow that still needs to come to light, right? Like all of that corruption, all of the parts of the way people want, people in government and high up and all of the elites, how they still want to gain control. Like this is a part of it. And so again, that sort of brings me back to what we were saying before, and my question to you about, are we still looking for someone outside of ourselves to tell us, what to do, how to live, how to run, run our families, how to create wealth, how many hours to work, all of these things, when really that needs to be coming from within. And yeah, I'm glad that we were able to speak about that, because we're still, as far, even though so much has changed, we're still kind of in the limbo because we still don't really know how things are going to pan out. And when you were saying about August being a big month in 2025, the biggest of the year, like what do you perceive, like something like that coming through then, or are you getting the feeling that it's going to be something else?
No, that's a really good question. I think what Neptune and Pisces represent since 2012 was a huge dream, and we're coming out that dream. Um, it really brought a huge dissolvement of what we see as identity. And this is where a lot of these identity politics came through. So we're coming into a hard pivot into Aries, where now spirituality is wrapped not just on what you believe you are, but who you actually are. And moving forward with all these concepts that come through. Since 1995, Saturn has, of course, gone around and come back. Now it's back in Pisces. It's going to leave like somewhat through next year. So, in ending that karmic cycle, I believe that it puts you in a position to not only step into a whole new renaissance of originality and the authority over your individuality, but it's also going to feel like we've come out of a crazy dream, you know? Um, Pisces, that is the sign of the legend or the fraud. I think there's a lot of people who've been looked at as credible who you'll realize were frauds and cons. And then there are people like me who are seen as con men pseudoscientific con men because I read astrology who are going to be recognized as legit, the real deal, and thousands of us, right, who've been carrying for a tradition. And that's not really because of a popularity contest. It's because of the actions we've taken since 2012. Now that we're not deluded with this Neptune, not that the Neptune is bad, but the dark side of that, I feel legacy media is a huge part of that. And literally the integrity of our actions coming to have people's past catch up to them or exonerate people who were seen as crazy, but actually always knew what they were talking about. So, yeah, I think that's a major facet. Pluto coming into Aquarius, which it wasn't there since the 1700s, fully awakening humanity and exposing the corruption of humanity. And most importantly, Uranus and Taurus. I feel like Uranus and Gemini, I think the Taurus transit was so amazing for bringing cryptocurrency and alternative methods of creating value up to speed. But now in Gemini, we're going to get technology where we can move stuff with our minds. We no longer have to use our fingers to choose stuff. We can put stuff on our head. It'll connect with our neurons and stuff that people might be afraid to step into, everything having AI attached to it. Literally, like you're able to talk to it, like Siri type apps might literally take over everything. So there's that technological rollout. However, yeah, the March eclipse, and then August is going to be next, late August into September is going to be the Virgo eclipse. So from that March to September period, everything that we have ever believed since the 1800s is going to get ready to be flipped all over its head and be made completely obsolete. That I feel like is my major prediction regarding that. The beliefs around that will flip March, and then by September, we'll start to gain analysis over how it's flipped and where to really pivot moving forward. And I'm very grateful to be a part of that period, especially during a time where we're getting ready to step into another 20, 50-year era. Yeah, very
Yeah,
excited.
absolutely. It is it's daunting and exciting at the same time because, I can feel internally, you're talking about um AI and not even using our hands, just using our voice and our mind to take action. And that, I can just feel myself go, oh no, because that is big change and big transformation. And that also means that there's a bit of letting go of control, right? If you feel like that's something that's creating a lack of control and you don't feel safe, there's going to be, and if this is just happening just in this conversation, let alone actually having to do it, I think that is telling of what the collective would be feeling as well, right? Because they would be that there will be some resistance. Any kind of change and transformation, there is resistance. And
That's what I was
so,
going to say.
yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry for interrupting. I was going to say relative to, when the car came out, when flip phones first came out, we had people in the old generation like, no, just resistant to doing all this stuff. And I never thought I would be at an age where I might start to do it too. And I have a question for you. What do you feel like Elon, like people, I wonder how people will feel about Elon Musk when he starts rolling out more, Neuralink apps where now things can be implanted in your brain. I think even Bill Gates, there was an article about Bill Gates wanting to implant digital certificates into children's brains, you know what I mean? And I don't necessarily want to have a closed off mind about that. I had to ask myself, like, we are going to enter a period of time where groundbreaking technology is going to be the norm. Like, I couldn't just be like, I don't want to use the internet. Everything is on the internet. You know what I mean? So is that just me being resistant? Or, like the internet, is there going to be good and bad with it? Right. So
yeah,
is
yeah. I like Elon. I feel like he's an alien. Like I feel like he is not of this world. Like I feel like he is, and I think you've said that as well, if I'm remembering correctly. Like he's just not from this planet. I feel like there is such an unusual nature about him. Even looking at he even looks like an alien, and that's not to be like super judgmental, but he kind of does. He looks like a bit
yeah.
of a weirdo. But I feel like You need you need people like that to pull us forward. But I have so many questions around, like, when you think about like how sacred the body is, right? And how, our vibration is, we're like, like a pure source. If you're not injecting yourself with all sorts of things, and you're like pure in that way, even more so, you're thinking that. But then to think about implanting something like a chip inside of you, that totally freaks me the F out. Like I think I feel like there's like a full skepticism to the whole thing. There's one thing holding phones, talking like this on technology, which I never thought that I would do. But there's a difference with putting something in your body that these people outside of you have access to. And I don't feel good about it, to be honest. Like right now in this moment, there is so much resistance. I mean, like I said, I felt that as soon as you started talking about it, I was like, you know, but when I think about how much especially over the last 12 months, I've had a lot of health stuff go on, and how much of like my physical body I've reclaimed, especially as a female, how much work and how sacred I hold myself in that way, to then think about it being disrupted with some technology. I don't think so.
And they're going to
Even,
be kids born
yeah.
either.
I just think I don't think so. Even like when you look at like what's it called? Contraception, there's like little chips that they implant under your skin to stop you, that exists, and that's been around for a really long time. I had a lot of resistance to even thinking about doing that. I never did, but just even that, and that's not even a chip that's like artificially connected to sending information to something else. Like I just think that's when we know maybe we've gone too far, because I feel like one of my big issues is that we're already so disconnected emotionally that this is just going to bring more of that in. Like we've got a lot of, really great technology. There's a time and a place for all things, but when we look at us as a society, connection is flailing, like so badly flailing. People don't want to have deep conversations. People don't want to connect. Like it is just so challenging. Imagine then when you don't even have to speak. You're just using your mind to send information around the place. Like,
So I have chills right now because that helped me make sense of something that I didn't realize as far as, and we can take it back to 2008 because Capricorn, oh, no, 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 no. No, it's actually starting from Pisces. But basically, yeah, yeah. Okay, no, they hate. Well, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, and Aries are four zodiac signs that are eighth house by the four social signs. Social distancing occurred during a period where no major planets were in social signs. So I think that theme of desensitizing more beyond that, we've only just begun. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. But one thing that's very interesting is there are children that are born, like the Gen Alpha kids, the Pluto Aqua kids over the next 20 years. They're going to see it as normal. They're going to look at us just like we looked at people like, oh, get with the times. They're going to look at us and be like, get with the times. Like, we have all this stuff, and like, what's the big deal? And that's what made me realize, damn, am I really just the old geezer? Am I really? Um, and the thing about that is, and I'm sure the people who create this technology have safeguards for this. So I'm not saying it could even happen because there could be some stuff I wouldn't know, right? But even if the people who produce these technologies have the best intentions, and I'm sure there'll be ways to kind of monitor that. What's to say hackers can't hack it and then start manipulating, what's happening within people? Maybe the way it's built, it'll make it so that it's impossible, right?
yeah,
Because I'm not sure how they make these technologies, but like it leaves room, just like with the internet. You had hackers that hacked accounts, stuff that was built with great intentions end up in the wrong hands, or being compromised, catastrophic. And that's going to happen no matter what period of time you're in. So yeah, new levels, new devils, but I'm excited. It definitely lets us see we're headed into the next step. Um, Hopefully we don't go back to the Bronze Age.
No, hopefully we don't. But I think about, people are already finding it challenging to take responsibility for the things that they're doing. So imagine with a chip in, like I'm thinking about all the negative things, obviously, not the positive things. But that's talking to the resistance that I've got about it. And I fully own that. But people are already not taking responsibility for their actions. Imagine with a chip in and they're, what about all the loopholes, all of like the negative things that they might do? And they'll be like, well, that was just the programming from the chip. That's just a side effect from the chip. It was the chip who made me do it. I got hacked, and it's like, yeah, but did you? Are you? Like I'm just a bit head tilty about it. I'm like, I don't know.
Convenience, a lot of plausible deniability, and
Yeah.
and a lot of these things are very intimate. It's a level of trust that humanity does not have
No.
with people at be. So it'll be very interesting. I think it'll be a hit once again with children who grew up with iPads and maybe don't care,
Yeah.
But I think that'll be very interesting. And then you have the people who maybe the first 2, 5, 10 years, they'll be hesitant. But now once you go to a gas station, it's like you can't pay for it unless you have that, right? You
Yeah.
don't have, not to say that'll happen, but who knows, that'll be interesting.
But you're right. Trust is the underlying issue, right? That you hit it 100%. When we don't already trust the government the way that it is, when we already don't trust each other in the community, there's a lot of distrust. A lot of people are acting from the shadow. There's a lot of crime. There's a lot of people who are doing some really bad things. If we don't have that trust now, how the hell would we trust ourselves with that kind of technology? And maybe I might, maybe we'll see it. Maybe I'll see it in this lifetime. Maybe I won't. Hopefully, I've moved on before that happens, and I don't have to worry about it. But I just think, yeah, it just kind of hurts my brain a lot. But trust is the theme for even the cycles that we've been through astrologically. All of those changes have been to build trust and to show where people are acting out of integrity, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe on the flip side, these new technologies can make it almost impossible to not be transparent.
Yep.
And maybe, in a positive sense, lessen a lot of the corruption. I mean, that's a lot of wishful thinking, but we'll see. We may see a weeding out of these forces that have been behind the scenes, kind of frustrating and impeding on liberties and uh, rights. But yeah, as of now, I think what we're getting ready to see has never been seen before.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just kind of surrendering and preparing to adapt where necessary, which I think is the biggest key. I think those who can adapt the best will suit the best through this versus people who are too rigid on either or side, you know.
Yeah, and you've got to be open-minded about things. But even just acknowledging that you might have some resistance about it is a good first start because then you're owning that aspect. It's not like you're just putting your head in the ground pretending it's never going to happen. There is going to be a lot of change. And even, when I think about the work that I'm doing now, I mean, it is that work hasn't really been seen, in the mass, and so well, it hasn't been seen in the mass, and so I'm okay with that kind of change, but that's because I'm leading it, and so again, that's where we're still working through collectively a lot of things around trust, and I'm so glad that we covered that aspect. Given that we're heading into a 9 year on a numerological level, what and that's all about endings. What do you see? Does that just form part of the astrology side of things, or do you feel like that's different again?
No, that's a really good question. The 9 years, 2025. Okay, you're going by the year. Okay. That I've definitely been skeptical of is because of the Gregorian calendar and if like the year could be trusted. But then it's so interesting. I don't know if it's a mechanic of, maybe just our perspective or just being able to see it. Like it, I I guess we can see what we want to see or whatnot, but yeah, it's just profound accuracy still through that. I was actually my life path is a nine. So I think it's actually very symbolic too, because if you think about it, um 2025 really does represent the end of all of what we've kind of come through since 2014, 2015 in that period, but also getting ready to signal a brand new beginning and restart that cycle. So that's just very, very interesting. Everyone gets to feel that America's back. Facets of American culture like hip hop and even country are back. So I thought that was very interesting. Like we kind of straight off try to start some new stuff, and but rubber banded it back. So yeah, very
And
interesting.
and even talking about hip hop, uh, we've seen a lot going on with the celebrity side of things as well, right? Especially in America, there's that big little pyramid situation that's going on over there that a lot of light is being brought to. It's been so interesting to see that unfolding, but that even that feels really slow. Do you think that that's going to there's going to be more coming through a bit faster now? Like it just feels,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I
It just
think
feels
on
like it's
one
been ages. Yeah.
ages as far as what?
Like it just feels like it's been a long time. Like this has been a long time coming.
Oh, okay, like the big reveal. And it's
Yeah.
just, well, I'm so glad you're saying it like that because one, people do have a right to know the truth, right? Especially if you're realizing that you've been pushed in your face these authorities and celebrities, and now you're finding out, oh, you don't even have integrity, you're involved in this stuff. So I can understand people's desire to want to see justice. I think the downfall of that, though, is people's obsession with what happens to these celebrities and wanting to cancel these celebrities. Not that they shouldn't be canceled, but I think now there's just too much of an excessive sensationalization of this that if anything, they may be part of a trap to look so it's like, hey, yeah, you see this? And it's like we're being breadcrumbed and you don't know what's happening all around because you're just so focused on what's happening with Diddy. Oh, now
Yeah.
it's with Jay-Z. You know what I mean? And to me, it just feels too good to be true. Like
Yeah.
we're wondering about what's happening with Jay-Z. We still don't know what's on Epstein's list. I know
Yeah.
President Trump promised he'll release it, which is
Yeah.
amazing. But it's and that's not to say that there won't be things exposed, but it really just made me kind of like snap out of that trance and um kind of realize even the stuff with Diddy and Jay-Z, my first impression of that, and mainly just Diddy, is I don't even think he's that bad. Not to say that he's not a bad person, but it's like he's just one of many in an industry that's done this. And I think the stuff he's getting exposed for is on the bottom level of how really bad or the top level of how really deep it could really go, you know? And that could be a precedent. That could maybe be us looking deeper into who's connected and whatnot, but this whole super sleuth thing where we have to get to the bottom of who's doing what, it's very entertaining, it's very fun, but I think it might be a huge downfall. I think it could backfire in a certain way. Not to say that it should stop. Once again, it's thoroughly entertaining. But yeah, it's just that's just something I noticed.
Yeah, and I agree. I don't I on social media you get the updates, and that's for me as far as it goes. Like I'm just sort of playing along. It's like seeing a video clip, that's fine. But it is really, I think, a really im important thing to reinforce that you've just got to zoom out of the picture. Just zoom out and look at like what like it's not just them. it's a collective of people that are a part of this. And that's what needs to be brought to the light, not the individuals specifically. Like all of them have to be, I think there needs to be some accountability there, but there's a bigger piece to this that people aren't paying attention to, and they're getting distracted by the nitty-gritty details of who,
Yeah.
did he, and where, where was he, and how old was the kid, and what was happening at those parties, and forget the detail. You know what's going on there, but zoom
Yeah.
out, like just zoom back out, because the more micro you are about it, the less you're paying attention to what is happening in the surrounds. And that's what you were saying. Like you're getting distracted. Like, what are you doing? There's like
With
so
people who they don't know, they've never met, like has nothing to do
exactly. They don't even
right.
know the names of these people who are, even bigger part of this. And that's, I interviewed someone this season actually where we were talking about um child sex trafficking. And that was like an epic conversation. A lot of people didn't want to listen to that podcast because it's too confronting. And that even tells the story, right? People don't want to
No,
know. They want to be addicted to the celebrity because in a way it's still keeping them. This is what's coming through now, right? It's still keeping them connected to these celebrities. It's still keeping them in that
exactly.
obsession with them like they had before, but now they've replaced it with a different narrative, but it's still the obsession is the same. The
Yeah.
it's the same. Like, why are you still even paying attention to these stupid people? Like, don't even worry about that. Like, zoom out, look bigger. There's more going on in the world beyond this. Like, these are just
I'm so glad
small
you mentioned.
players in this game. They're puppets.
I mean, technically, yeah, I completely agree. I didn't even think of it like that. I'm so glad you worded it like that because it's like people want to pretend like they care until it comes to actual serious issues. And then some people may try and act like they care too much, but they're really not doing anything. They're really not saying anything.
Yeah.
They're really not willing to do the actual work, and we just want to kind of ingest it. And it really taught me a lot about how people will idolize and deify certain people only to completely strip them bare and then throw them in the trash. And I think a major lesson of Saturn and Pisces is all the problems in the world are all our fault. And we can keep pointing the finger at this CEO or this corporation until we realize we're a large part of why they're rich, why we're still going along with the program. I think it's going to be a huge somber realization that we also have a huge responsibility. Like, of course, you people have done great things. It's not like everyone is bad, but we are all complicit in a certain way of, kind of taking part of certain of these things. And I saw something, shout out to 12 House Queen. She had sent me something about how now you have warning signs of CEOs that they're targeting. And that reminds me of the French Revolution, the last time Pluto was in Aquarius, where every monarch was getting beheaded. And I feel like celebrities and CEOs are like, and corporations are the new monarchs. Not that, and of course, like the monarchs, maybe most of them are corrupt, but this can get really anarchic. I also felt Pluto Aquarius was a vigilante era where people would just kind of put the law in their own hands, but maybe without the proper training, it could just be like a wild, wild west. So yeah, it's very concerning because it's exciting, but concerning because I mean, if CEO wanted posters are coming out there and a Gen Z 1998, kid can just decide to kill him, even though he's from a wealthy family. Now it sparked that idea that, oh, okay, I can actually holler at a chick, put my mask off, and I may not even get caught by the NYPD. And now people feel like he's probably not even behind what happened. It's just so interesting.
Yeah. And,
Very,
and when you look at the celebrity side of things, when they started, they were innocent kids. Most of them were in the teens when they started in that industry, right? And So they were corrupted. So who was corrupting them? But where are we talking? Where are we having that conversation? Who were the people? Like they didn't just start like that. They didn't like they're not, 15 and 16 or whatever, cruising in, being, in that evil energy or anything. That they were corrupted, they were bribed, they were told they had to. And so then they started mimicking that behavior. And you want more money, you want more success, you want more fame, well, you need to keep doing these things. And how much of your soul are you willing to sell? But who are the people that are driving that? Where are they in this conversation? And that is where people just need to pull out of the picture, like zoom out, just zoom out, stop focusing on the individuals, zoom out. And even when you look at the like world leaders, it's the same thing. Like zoom out of the picture. You don't need someone telling you you have to pay tax or you have to work 9 to 5 because we've decided that you have to, and you can't access your own money in your account if you want to protest, and all of this stupid shit that has been happening. Like zoom out, just stop thinking one person is going to save the day, because they're not. The individuals are going to save it, and that's what we were saying at the beginning.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I like that you say, stop looking for a savior, stop looking to deify one person. I like that. It's so interesting in the context of Kendrick Lamar and President Trump, both Geminis. Jupiter has been leveling up our sign. President Trump's gonna swear on January. Kendrick Lamar is gonna perform at the the Super Bowl on February. And these are both two people who have been accused of being deified, where one is called like hip hop savior, and he's gone out of his way to say he's not a savior. He's a regular person too. People try and act like Trump is Jesus or he's going to save everything. And when they're just supposed to show us the power of one individual and how you reflect that power too, and how we can, which is very interesting.
Yeah, it is. Something else that you've been talking about recently is how important creativity is right now, and how that's going to help us transition into this next, 12 months. What,
Yeah.
like, can you talk a bit more to that?
Well, um, I know Jupiter's going to be in Leo on the South Node 2027. It's going to be very amazing for Leos too, by the way. Congratulations.
That's thanks.
Um, oh yeah. And then that's when the North Node will be on Pluto in Aquarius. That opposition, I think, is just societally shifting. It's getting ready to evolve a lot so that when Saturn later goes through there, coming into the next decade, like the mid 2030s, now we're creating infrastructure around these new ideas. So, I mean, I think now that we're still breaking out of the Aries towards Gemini, it's individuals with innovative ideas through that creativity that's going to really ripple effect to where now we start to, in our society, borrow these ideas. And that's going to really come to a return of form, come to really, new ways of identifying ourselves. I think a major element of the creativity we're coming into is relative to who you are, and how we see who we are is drastically shifting forever. So it's going to change the nature of how we create and what we create. I think a major facet, and this is just a prediction or a theory, I think a major facet of that moving into Neptune in Aries is now transcending everything that we have. Because if we talk about, if we take everything we identify ourselves as, people identify as their race, they identify as their ethnicity, they identify as, you know what I'm saying, their nationality. These are all things that we have. When we die, we don't take those things with us. So can we really say that's what we are? And I think we're going to come into a much more, maybe even supported by scientific discovery, the knowledge of the spirit, the soul, that life animation, where I do believe we're spirits, we're souls, we're having a human experience. And it's been bounced around and said, but how do we apply that? How do we actually live that? I think that's where we're coming into, and that's going to really revolutionize how much more creative we can be. Could be
Yeah.
awesome.
And it's such a good outlet, especially if you're feeling resistance, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling like the world is just getting a bit too much. Being creative is a really great way to shift it and let the energy flow through you and connect back to your spirit, to your essence. And it can happen really quickly. You can just be doodling. It doesn't have to be anything, big, but just some singing, some dancing, anything on a creative level is going to bring you back to your spirit. And that, yeah, I really love that you've been talking about that lately. And it's a good reminder to me because sometimes I can get too focused on the work side of things, and I'm a very creative person. I paint. I haven't done that in ages, and I'm like, that's a good little reminder. Why haven't I been painting? Why haven't I been letting that energy just flow through me? And when I paint, like I'm always in there. I don't care what happens. Whereas with my work, I'm always thinking about like I want the outcome to be a certain way, and that's not staying in the flow. It's not meant to be like that, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah,
And
and business. When I look at business in this new way, this new paradigm, it is about just channeling it in through spirit, through your spirit and your higher self out into offers that are from your heart space. But if you're continuously thinking about outcomes and restriction, and there's so many people, and you would see this on Insta especially, you know, use this strategy to get to this and do this to get to this. And it's so disconnected from their spirit. No one's really sharing that aspect. No one's really talking to that. So I think being creative is even going to help with that side of things as well, let alone just feeling soulfully full. You're going to probably get a shitload of inspiration for your work as well.
and yeah, I mean, just also changing the way it may almost feel like a whole new dimension of ourselves opens up that was always there. And just, when you were saying what you were saying, I had a vision of how, you had DJs on the ones and twos, having to bring the physical thing versus now where you could just be on your laptop, right? And I think we're coming into another revolution where it's like now all that's obsolete, right? Maybe the way we do everything resets, and maybe you can't do it the way you used to, or maybe you still can, but it might bring more of a divide. Like, no, I still got to do it the way we're used to. But I mean, I think, we'll see, because I see them both ways, preserving tradition in one sense, but also still stepping into innovation like we've been doing,
Yeah.
but that'll be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I have an internal fight that goes on continuously because I love the rules. I love the structure, right? It's the
Yeah.
Capricorn in me. I like just and especially with the trauma that I've experienced, I don't like surprises. I like to know that A is with B is going to equal C and then it's done. But that doesn't that there's no flow there. There is a time and a place for structure, obviously, but with your work and with the way we are doing business, it needs to be anchored into our essence, into our spirit, into our truth, which is why the last few years has been so important from an inner transformation perspective, because we've been learning how to connect in and how to be our most authentic selves and how to bring more of that to the light. But the part of me that loves all of the rules and the structure and following along, right? I love that because it feels easy. But then there's the other half of me that's the visionary, that I'm like, but no, but I'm seeing that we can do it like this. And so there's these two parts of me that are like, in a tug of war all the time. And it is, I can imagine that there are quite a few people that are entrepreneurs and, just in general, who are feeling that way, like they're seeing this new path, this new evolution, this new way, but at the same time, they kind of like, and it's part of the deconditioning, obviously, but the other part that likes, everything in its place. And so when you're looking at people who are trying to sell at you all of these different structures, I think there needs to be a pause. And I'm just thinking about this now as we're saying. I feel like there needs to be a pause to say, hey, like, is this really leading me to more of where the vision is coming through, or is this keeping me in the same old, you
The
know?
same old too. I like that you mentioned that because breaking out of old patterns, and I think people more than ever are tired of that. And I appreciate it's so much easier for people to recognize that too. And
Yeah.
they're just so disillusioned. They have less of a tolerance to kind of just, okay, we'll let this happen. Like I think that's done. I don't think people are even willing to anymore.
Yeah, and like as entrepreneurs, we're creative, right? So we are visionaries, we are creating, we are channeling through our vision and our mission and using that our voice to like push it forward. But when like especially now, like I'm seeing there's a hardcore sales push right now on Instagram for entrepreneurs who might, and the thing is, even for me, right? Because I'm in this beautiful I'm a I'm having a big breakthrough. I'm in the middle of it, well, kind of towards the end, but middle to end section, which makes sense for 2025 as well. But it just you're seeing this massive push on Instagram. Everyone is selling their wares like left and right. I don't know if that's in your feed, but it's in my algorithm. Everyone is selling their wares, like everyone is selling the here, this is what's going to help take you to 6 and 7 figures here, it's like a big sales push across Instagram, all of these different individuals who are pushing at the moment because I know it's Christmas time. It's a good time to generate sales, but I can feel the ick. And then again, like that internal, and I think it's like really important as an entrepreneur to be really mindful when you are feeling like you're going through a breakthrough for that new vision, like pay attention to the energy that is happening and where you're being lured into. And there is a huge, like I noticed last night, I was like, I have to put my phone down. I can't look, I can't have another person telling me how I'm going to be able to reach my clients and how I'm going to be able to
Yeah.
use my voice more and how to be in. It's like, and a lot of them are using energy and spirituality as like the talking points to hook,
Mhm.
and it feels like a hook to make sales right now. But I feel like, and I'm wondering, I'm just interested. I know we've gone off on a tangent here, but I'm just so interested in your perspective about this. Do you feel like there's like people come in like selling like this one concept, especially like the influencers and stuff, and that I'm living like this magnificent life that looks like this, and then they collect these people, and then those people start mimicking that other person rather than who they are. And then that's how the money is being generated rather than it being like this natural, like organic, real, truthful, impactful way that has a legacy attached to it. Like, do you get what I'm saying?
You absolutely nailed it. And I think you kind of highlighted the most important theme of the rest of this decade, where originality, original acts are going to thrive the most. And people can look back at the past now. We can look at how, oh, when this trend came out, you were doing this. When this trend came out, you were doing this, versus people who kept it original the whole way through
Yeah.
and, have receipts for that. And my question is, what's next after spirituality? Because the spirituality grift has been just as bad as it's ever been. It's gotten so much worse. It's always existed. But like you said, like people started to now, different, they just put a different face on it. Now they're acting because now it's relevant. Now they're acting spiritual and whatnot. And it makes me think, what are they going to move on to? What's the next thing that people are going to start to act like, oh, this and that. And yeah, we'll see. We will
Yeah.
see.
Well, the receipts will be, have they done the actual work? Have they done the internal work? I know, hand on my heart, I have done the work because there have been multiple, like I've lost count of how many times I've been curled up in a ball in that death rebirth cycle. I have lived it. I don't wear it like a badge, but I know where I've been and I know how often I take myself there. I do that all the time to keep breaking through, to keep the innovation happening. And that's like the aqua in me as well. It's kind of part and parcel of the aqua rising behavior. But I feel like you're right, like beyond, like you're using this as like a way to sell, but where is the anchor point for these people spiritually then? Where's the depth in this? How are you leading them when I haven't seen any of that? When you're still talking about getting to six and seven figures, like I don't want to.
Yeah,
If I have to hear that again, seriously, like it is driving me crazy, and that's why that was happening last night because I was like,
yeah,
I can't, I just can't. As an entrepreneur, I don't want that. It doesn't feel heart-led to me. Like it feels
right.
like this is the fast track to get you to where you want to be. But like, why are you hurrying? Like, where's the urgency there? Like, why are
Model.
you not just letting things organically evolve? And I know the
Yes.
the people that I admire, the people that I interview, the change makers that I see, they're it's like the turtle and the hare. Like we're like the little turtles that are just like staying behind. Like there's a lot of behind the scenes work that goes on. There's been a long road to this, and we haven't even hit our turning point yet. I don't even think we've hit all of our magic yet, all of our recognition yet, the way that the world sees. And you were saying that at the beginning of our conversation too. Like we haven't even hit that point yet, but these other people, what's their foundation really look like? What's going to happen then when there's nowhere to go, when you've already used that to death, and then there's more, like what?
And I feel like based on what you said, there's going to be a huge facelift.
Yeah,
It's like we're going to see, oh, you never had a foundation. You know what I mean? And this could
yeah,
be with established people who we just assumed like you too, like we would have never thought you were frauding or you were whatever. And then it's just going to give such a shift for people who may have been looked at like that, and you see, oh wow, they really did the work. Like you get to see what that work is, and we'll get to kind of continue to produce and show more of an identity of what that means and who we are because of it. And that's what makes me respect those who, in doing this journey, some people fell off because they weren't getting the money that they wanted to see from it, versus those of us who it was never about the money. It was
yeah,
actually serving real people. You know what I mean? Like it was
yeah,
actually so. I think this Saturn Pisces transit, which is integrity of beliefs, is most definitely going to reflect that. And it's just going to be totally victorious
yeah,
for those who may have felt they were overlooked or they didn't want to cut corners. And now you're getting rewarded for that,
yeah,
which is
yeah.
beautiful.
And for me, it's however long it takes is however long it takes. Like I just
Okay.
know this is the work that I'm being called to do. You know that this is the work that you're being called to do. However long it takes, it takes, you
Yes.
know, because it isn't
Like
about
you
the
know when
money.
you're
Yeah.
on tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is about the highest good of all. That's our work. That's our impact. And that's, to me, like it's just such a good reminder. Like I said, I know that we took a tangent there, but I feel like that has obviously come through and channeled in for a reason. But I before I let you go, it will be so remiss of me to not ask you this question. I asked you this in season one, but I wanted to know what's going on with relationships. What's happening there? What does that going to look like? We've spoken about work. We've spoken about um, like the world stage. We've talked about all of those cycles and transformations. But what about union? What are the current unions? What are they going to go through? And the ones who are not in union, what are they? What are they? What can they expect?
Very good, very great question. And a lot of what we said about doing the work, that's what some frauds also say too. Like they use the same language, but now with our actions, we can see the difference. Um, yeah, I really like that question because Venus just crossed over Pluto. So that marks a whole new 20-year era in in tandem with new innovative technology that I think is going to completely change the way we date in as short as like 6 months, like coming into 2025. I was even thinking like we might see a return to form. Like back in the day, like a major conflict of interest between older musicians and younger musicians is that older musicians of course, were gatekept by major labels and television. And back in the day, you had to go out on the streets and pass out CDs and really see people. Then that transition to I can just do it online. I can go viral. And then you had the phenomena of people who are very famous online, but it doesn't translate to like real sales and stuff. So I think we're going to see a return to form where now we're coming back out to really talk to the people, to really, I think this huge disillusionment is many people wanting to get away from the internet. And like it's cool to touch grass now, which I think is the most hilarious thing, how like just being social, going outside is supposed to be right. And I get that. But of course, that's only happening because there's so many, people terminally online. I stay online personally myself, getting ready to kind of like, and I personally wanted to isolate myself since like 2017 to about Uranus and Gemini. But now I feel like there's going to be more renewed effort for people to want to overcome like um any resistance towards exploring your community, building community, but now with technology and now with all that. So with Venus that's on Aquarius in Pluto or Pluto on Aquarius, or Venus that's on Pluto in Aquarius, before the other planets come through, and then Uranus that will subsequently be Gemini and Saturn and Neptune in Aries. I feel like the way the a lot of what really screwed up the twin flame soulmate concept were all the plethora of grifters who just jumped on that to just make a quick buck because it's so easy to just say, hey, you want to be with your soulmate. And it really took away the deeper fact and truth that these connections really exist, And it put people more into a delusion where they're looking for their soulmate. Like this is my soulmate and this is my twin flame. Instead of just like really getting to know the person you're in front of, instead of having to force a label on it, right? And I think now that's going to also return to form where in understanding a new dimension of us, we apply that new dimension to dating. I feel like moving forward, energy manipulation and being able to really incorporate the supernatural is also going to be a major breakthrough in qualities of relationships where there's so many people who've been disillusioned that really don't care anymore versus people who didn't let their heart get bitter. They didn't let all this corruption impurify their heart and they still they didn't let themselves getting hurt by other people and now have them hurt. So I think it doesn't have to create a divide, but the things that we talk about as far as like dating issues and relationship issues are going to be virtually night and day coming into like 3, 5 years from now versus the last 5 years. A lot of the issues we've had, I think, in a short 6 months to 2 years will be completely made obsolete, but will also present its new share of problems. And that's where I feel like, oddly enough, supernatural abilities and advanced technology is going to completely transform the way we're able to form relationships, even long distance, and to close that gap. So I am kind of hopeful about that. I feel like it's going to open up the space for people to be so much more open and less private and secretive. I think this whole culture that has indirectly glorified infidelity and hypersexuality, I think we're having a new group of children who don't think that's cool. And they, more awareness around groomers and people who are underage. So like these a lot more conversations that couldn't have been had in the 70s or the 90s that began to start in the 2010s will completely just take over moving forward. And the good, the bad, the ugly, it's not all going to be beautiful, but I think it really opens up so much more outside of the realm of what we're normal to. And then on the outside of that, I think we're going to see so much more. unconventional relationships where, maybe a large amount of women and men turn to robots and sex toys to
Oh my
virtual,
God, no. Oh my God, no.
you know what I mean? Like that could desensitize people.
Maybe I
And then
could create my perfect man that way.
exactly, it's funny now, but it'd be
Oh my
interesting.
God.
Our models being bought for like 12,000, 15,000 bucks. And it's like, wow, this person does everything for me. And we can, bump uglies. And that's just real Aquarius. That's going to be weird, but there's going to be a group of people where that's normal to them. They grew up seeing this. It's not weird, right? You guys are old geezers who used to meet up in person, like, you know what I mean? And that's just going to be such an interesting shift.
Oh my
But
God, no. I don't want to see any of that. That's terrible. Even the ones who are like, um, having like these relationships with AI models and stuff, like you've seen that around the place. Like even that is like madness to me. I just think like why? Like what? Like how are you having a relationship with a robot or like an AI model or whatever? But because you can't feel their soul. So how is that going to feel satisfying?
And
Like,
another part of that too, I'm so glad you mentioned soul. Another part of that too is the proliferation of strip clubs back in the day, where of course at least you would be there, right? And you have a bunch of people who fall in love with strippers or sex workers that it's their job. They don't like you, you know what I mean? Like and they give a lot of money. Now we have this online with platforms that people digitally, one of the biggest news pieces is a woman from Gen Z made like 43 million on OnlyFans, right?
yeah,
And we're going to, I don't think people realize OnlyFans was just like a Trojan horse. It was just a sneak peek. We're going to see like 50 of those. Like that's going to be normal. That's going to be so normal. Like where, okay, oh yeah, she or he has their profile for like $5 a month or $10 a month. And that's part of the desensitization where of course our parents generation you would never see that type of thing happen, but I really think there's going to be pushback where it's like no, but then it's going to be so everything there's always a sense of pushback, but then it becomes normalized in a certain way. So there's also that as well, and I think that's interesting.
listen, I feel like I've seen too much already. I don't want to see that. That's just too much. I like I'm like heading into the 50s in the next couple of years, and I don't there's not I don't want to see that. I'm just gonna put like some I'll just put like headphones on and sunglasses and pretend I'm living somewhere else.
But I think it'll be even stronger. Like if we see that, where of course things will evolve and people will kind of fluctuate. But I
Yeah,
think now meeting someone who you do have a connection with, it's going to be so much more meaningful. It's
yeah,
going to be so much stronger. It's going to be so aligned because many of us made it through this 12, 20-year period where we were being blatantly experimented on, lied to, you know what I mean? And now we get to really see with clearer eyes. And now we know more of the context of what's happening, or at least I believe so, or I wish. And yeah, very interesting.
well, hopefully, yeah, because there's a lot of people who have been deep diving into their spirit. They've been head down, tail up in all of their look, doing a lot of internal work, and I know a lot of, especially a lot of females that are waiting for union with the right person, with, someone, another soulful, heart-led person. And so hopefully we start to see more of that through 2025. But I can't, I can't, I was just thinking about like Christmas Day sitting around a table where you've got like my younger cousins. I don't have kids, but younger cousins and stuff who've got their children who have got their robot girlfriends and boyfriends there. Like that would just be so funny.
And I mean like uh I
Like,
don't know if it's gonna be like 3 years or 5 years or maybe one or two, but I love that you're saying it's funny because it is. And yet I can totally see that being normalized
Uh,
completely. Even it might start off with robots that aren't even functioned to do that.
yeah.
And people just kind of, you know what I mean? So that just open up, more of I think we're stepping into the era where many jobs could be replaced by, robots.
Yeah.
Already kind of happened, but I don't think we're ready for the level with which it's going to happen. And that doesn't
Yeah.
have to be a bad thing, but it definitely will. It definitely will change the way we approach it and do a lot for sure.
For sure, especially when you look at agriculture, that side of things, like you can see how helpful that would be for, the how challenging that and physically challenging that is on a human body. Having a robot do that, that would, you can see where the opportunities are. But when you think about like family units, and then like I said, around the like the image that I've got of like robots around the table, I just think, oh no, I can't do it. That's too
And then
much.
there's the issue of depopulation, where certain people are saying that not a lot of people are having babies.
Yeah,
So it's interesting to see. Are we coming into a period of mass extinction? Um, every time Pluto's been in Aquarius, a lot of people have lost their life. Now that's very vague because a lot of people lose their life regardless, right? But we know the last two times we had inquisitions with the Institute of Roman Catholicism, the breakaway of Protestantism from Catholicism, which with those holy wars brought countless deaths. Then we have the last time Pluto was in Aquarius, colonialism, where like entire groups of people are just genocided just due to disease alone, you know? So it'd be interesting to see if a lack of babies is part of this issue. Less people could afford to have kids, less people want to have kids. That in and of itself could create a baby boom where now more people think, oh, we have to make more kids. So I'm sure it can go either way, but yeah, that's just something that's been very interesting to me.
well, it's going to be an interesting future ahead. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. I'm just feel so grateful that you're the last one of season two, and
Oh,
for
nice. I love that.
yeah, the last one. And today, like recording it today, we're on the 12th as well. So all of the numbers super special
Oh,
for today's recording. I'm so excited. And um just thank you for all of your insight, all of your wisdom, all of your knowledge that you shared today. It's been so good. It's so nice to see you and talk to you. Thank you.
likewise. Thank you very much.